This is Jameson Newlander from The Lost Boys and Bone Tomahawk, and you're listening to the Don't Go Out There horror movie podcast. Don't go out there. Don't go out there. Just trust me. Just listen to the podcast and just don't go out there. All right?
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. We really appreciate all the support. You guys have been awesome. Before we jump into tonight's film review, I just want to give a quick shout out to our website, don'tgoouthere.com. You can find all of our episodes, our interviews, our store, our blog, and we've also started a Patreon called Blood Donors. Just go to the website and check that out.
Don't go out there, listeners and fans. We have exciting new news. We are launching a Patreon-esque campaign called Blood Donors. You like that name? But we've created 5 donor tiers that give you the opportunity to earn different perks with donations, and in exchange for you helping us keep the lights on, you can earn t-shirts, autographed pictures, and even join us for an episode of your choice. Any donation goes straight to helping with web hosting, SoundCloud hosting, guest procurement, etc. We have some of the best loyal listeners, and we love each and every one of you and can't believe every day that we get to do this. Many have donated already. Thank you so much for continuing to listen and give us all the support that you do. Just go to don'tgoouthere.com. That's don'tgoouthere.com and click donate. And oh yes, there will be blood.
And check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for Don't Go Out There on those platforms, or just use the link from our website. Give us a follow and interact with us. We really appreciate it, and we love hearing your feedback. And tonight is Brother Brian's film review, 2015's Bone Tomahawk. Brian, you want to give us your general overview and your thoughts, man?
Yeah, and I'm a little bit under the weather because of this COVID shot, so bear with me tonight. Also, if you do bear with us, I got a little surprise at the end of the episode that we're going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway. So listen out for the questions. You just got to listen to us for about an hour and a half, and you'll get them. But look, this is definitely our first Western. And I may be in the minority here, but I'm actually a big fan of Westerns. I used to actually watch them growing up with my grandpa, so I'm pretty educated in all things John Wayne, the gunfighters. Tombstone is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. So when I saw this come out, I saw the cast, which is incredible and star-studded with just legends. I definitely had to check this out. And wow, because I did no research on this first thing at all. And like I said in our interview with Jameson Newlander, which you can find on don'tgoouthere.com, this movie shocked the hell out of me. I mean, it's just a brutal damn masterpiece. And while at 2 hours it may seem like it would be long, to me it wasn't at all. The parts I think a lot of people kind of think will probably be slow. I actually really loved them. I love that the most about this movie, actually. And we'll get into it. Craig Zoller wrote and directed this, as well as, he did a lot of the soundtrack or like lack thereof soundtrack, if I'm being honest. But when it all said and done, though, like I realized I'd never really seen anything like this movie. So when the opportunity presented itself, like I knew I had to pick it, for this. I mean, there are parts I'm not a big fan of. I mean, mostly towards the end, but for the most part, I love this movie. The dry sense of humor that goes along with the first 2 acts, I absolutely love it. This is one of those where I love it, but I really can understand if you don't. This is definitely one of those I think has to be in your wheelhouse there.
All right, I'll go next real quick. I've heard of this movie in the past from one of my favorite horror YouTubers, Horrible Reviews. He talked about how much he liked this movie, and the only thing I knew about it was Western, and it had Kurt Russell and some other big actors in it, which I'm big fans of. Patrick Wilson, Matthew Fox, love him in We Are Marshall. Second time I've brought that up on this show. Next birthday review, We Are Marshall, is not horror related, but it's one of my favorites. Like Brian just said, he can understand what if someone doesn't like it. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan, not a Western fan, honestly. But it's really not even the Western thing. I thought it was just a little too long, and there's just some things I would change to make it a little bit better. But I mean, it wasn't a bad movie. If you go back and listen to our Orphan review and you listen to Brian's rating of that movie, I pretty much feel how Brian felt about that movie, about this movie. I think it's shot well. It looks good. But did I enjoy really watching it? Honestly, no, not really. But Mike, you're next. What'd you think, brother?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit more in line with you, Nico. Now, right off the top with some positives, this cast is phenomenal. I said it in our group chat. I believe that was yesterday, where this cast is just outstanding. Kurt Russell, Matthew Fox, David Arquette, who I know doesn't have the biggest role, but man, he's in here. Sid Haig in a little bit of a cameo appearance, and it's just golly, and of course Patrick Wilson, who for our show, Conjuring fame, and yeah, I mean that's the one I like the most. But anyway, Insidious as well. Just a great cast. So I want to get that off the top right there, and I think the acting is great. However, I'm not a big Western fan. There's a few exceptions. I like True Grit. I like Django, if you consider that a Western.
Yeah.
But there's a few exceptions here and there. But I'm not a big Western fan. I didn't grow up on them. I think maybe if I grew up on them, I would like it a lot more. I just thought this movie had about a 50-minute, and this is where I'm opposite of Brian, about a 50-minute period in the middle that I just thought nothing happens. And I know I'm okay with the movie kind of pulling me in and having good dialogue scenes, but there was just a lot of it where I felt like it was monotonous and very, very dry. And again, it wasn't the acting I mean, they get the atmosphere of being, on the frontier very well. They nail that. The directing, I think, is really well done. There's a couple just gorgeous shots in this movie, especially inside the saloon. I just think that this movie runs real long for me. It's not one I would want to go back to a ton. I would watch it again though. Now that being said, the first 30 and the last 30 I love. I think they're a damn fine film. I just think the hour in the middle there, hour and change in the middle, just really drags it down for me. There's some good storytelling, and we're going to get into that. But I mean, they spend a long time, and maybe it's just me that doesn't like westerns, and so that's why I have the stance I do. But I'm excited to talk about it because, again, it's hard to beat this damn cast. I mean, we really haven't had a movie that just has more of a star-studded cast of damn fine actors as this movie does. But this movie, and I put it on Twitter, has one of the most brutal kills I have ever seen in any movie. And we've seen a lot of shit, but just the actual kill itself, and I'm going to save it till we get there, is just brutal for a number of reasons. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and I can definitely, like, I when I was watching it, I was going, man, like I really love and enjoy some of these parts, and I was like, yeah, I bet you that I'm going to be the only one that likes this, but it's just, I don't know, there's and we'll get into it, but like the character moments in some movies, I'm feel the same way. I'm just like, oh my god, when is this over? And then some movies I'm like, oh shit, like I could have more. Right. So right. I mean, I get it. It's right. I get it.
And one more thing I want to point out: there's some well-placed, well-timed humor in this movie. I know that Brother Dustin pointed out. So if he ends up being able to come on, I'm going to save it and let him have that moment. But I agree with him. There's just a couple lines here and there that are really well-placed moments of levity that this movie kind of needs, and so I enjoy those as well.
As David Arquette would say in this movie, y'all been squirting lemon juice in my eyes since you walked in here.
Hey, David Arquette must have felt weird having some competent police work in front of him. All right, anyway, let's go.
I can't believe it. I think Mike actually read my review at the end because he said kind of a lot of the stuff I was going to say at the end. Me and Mike agree on a movie. Wow, look at God.
Wow. Leave it up to my movie to be the one y'all
Look
fucking
at
agree
God.
on.
Hey, Brian, I do like this movie. I just wish it was about 35 minutes shorter. That's all.
I get that. I get it.
Y'all ready to jump into scene by scene?
Let's do it.
All right. The film starts with Buddy and Purvis killing some people who are asleep in the desert. Purvis asks why they always wet themselves when they die. Buddy shoots one of the guys who he didn't slit his throat deeply enough. He tells Purvis not to burn any of the Bibles. It's bad luck. Purvis tells Buddy he hears horses, so they have to run and hide in the rocks. They see skulls in the cliffs, and Purvis thinks it's a sign. They keep marching forward and get to an Indian burial ground looking place. They hear a horn blow, and Buddy gets shot in the throat with an arrow. Purvis runs away as we see another dark figure killing off Buddy. 11 days later, we're in Bright Hope, an old western city. Arthur is sitting on the couch soaking in his own pity over his broken leg. Samantha, his wife, asks if he wants coffee, then asks if his intention is to sulk the next 12 weeks. He finally made foreman, then he broke his leg and he's mad. Samantha says, "At least you're with me and it's not all that bad." He says she's prettier than most cows. Now we see Purvis burying a bag outside in the night, and John Bruder goes into the town saloon. He gets a drink and wakes up the pianist to play him a song after nagging him over the pricing. He pays the man, then gets tricked into buying him a whiskey. Chicory, the backup deputy, gets to Sheriff Franklin's and asks for some soup. He's feeling famished. Sheriff tells him to make sure he eats every day. Chicory tells him of his nightly ramble, and he saw a fella on the perimeter he doesn't know. He changed clothes and buried his luggage and came off as suspicious. He tells Sheriff he's at the Learned Goat. The two men leave to go check it out. Back at Arthur and Samantha's, and they're making love, and she asks how's his leg doing. He gets hurt, and he climbs on top because he wants to do this the right way. Bartender asks Purvis what he'd like. He gives him a drink called Redwood. Sheriff and Chicory show up, and the sheriff questions Purvis, who says he's Buddy now. Sheriff begins to question him over and over and stumps him repeatedly. He asks Purvis about the hole he dug, and he takes off running, but Sheriff shoots his leg, and he falls and bangs his head on the ground, knocking him out. Sheriff sends John over to Arthur and Samantha's. Samantha is propping Arthur's broken leg up on several pillows. He thanks her and asks if there's anything he can do for her. She asks him to read the poem from Wyoming out loud to her. He doesn't want to do it, but can't find a polite reason he shouldn't do it. A knock at the door. It's 10:30 p.m. and it's John Bruder. They need Samantha to pull the bullet out of Purvis's leg at the jailhouse, and then she tells him to keep that leg elevated as he removes the pillows. And I thought that was pretty humorous. All right, Brian, that's the first two scenes I got. What you think, man?
Yeah, first off, let me get this out of the way because some movies are just like this for me, and this is one of them. Look, I've seen this movie a handful of times, but I just honestly have no interest in really learning their names that much. And it doesn't help that this cast is so ridiculously famous and well known, but so it's like it's hard for me to not call them by their English names, as my grandpa used to say. So probably going to just call them by their actor's name throughout this. I love the cold open with Arquette and Sid Haig, rest in peace. It lets you know right off the bat what you're in for. Just brutal as hell. I thought it was funny. You get the respect for the Bible from Haig, even after he just committed murder. That's dry sense of humor that I like. And one thing I want to point out that I think Zoller did so well throughout this thing was the sound. Like it's just, here's a word again, so dry. The sound of ligaments, bones cracking, tearing. And, the dialogue in this, I think sometimes gets some hate. But two things about that. Zoller uses real dialogue from that time period. Some that I even had to look up. Most of that, comes from Russell, but it's also so dry, which like I said, I know I just used that word to describe the soundtrack, but it's my sense of humor. Like I laughed my ass off during the beginning with Sid and Arquette, like just their exchange. I think it's great. I loved it. Now the scenes with Patrick Wilson and his wife, Lily Simmons, they do sound a little off. And so, I'm not really sure how else to put that. Like, it's just, the dialogue's just very 1800s and it works, except for when the husbands are talking to their wives. To me, it's just a little bit like, meh. And it's more so Patrick Wilson, like Kurt Russell and his wife. I think I don't really see that. I have that issue so much as I do when Patrick Wilson's talking to his wife. Um, I also love how you can hear Haig being gutted, but it doesn't show it yet. Honestly, I think this is a pretty traditional Western for the most part, which is probably why I like it after this first scene. It's a pretty good introduction to pretty much everyone in this group of scenes. Matthew Fox, another one that I think is just so good in this. He's such a cocky, arrogant, almost Ringo Starr-esque character from Tombstone. Love his introduction and the exchange with the piano player. We get a nice cameo from James motherfucking Tolkien, by the way. Back to the Future, Top Gun, Dick Tracy, Masters of the Universe. I love the cast of this movie, and James fucking Tolkien is just icing on the cake right there. We said I get tired after 2, so the third costs extra, you slacker. I loved it. I threw that last part in for those of you who hadn't seen the movie, but he said it in my mind. Kurt Russell, what else can you say about Russell? He pulls off one of those 1800s lines like just perfectly because he's just such a goddamn force. This actually came out the same year as Hateful Eight. And also, last little fun fact about Russell in this movie: the town of Bright Hope is shot actually at the Paramount Ranch, where a lot of westerns have been shot, including Gunsmoke, which Russell was actually a part of back in 1964. Sadly, that ranch burned down with the big fires back in 2018. But anyway, it's the official opinion of the backup producer that your manner is suspicious, Mike, but you may proceed, sir.
You motherfucker. No. Okay. So, first of all, I like this set of scenes a lot. There's a lot happening. So I will give it that, or at least there is to me. Some of the dialogue, you're right, is a little old-timey, for lack of a better word, but that doesn't bother me. I like that setting. So I'm cool with that. And like you, Brian, I'm just going to call these people by their acting names if I know them, because they're in so much other shit that I just really can't help it. So you get Sid Haig and David Arquette, which, by the way, I think I mentioned, I may not have been talking to you guys, but I was talking to somebody else about this film. This is like the only horror movie scene we get until about the last 35 minutes, which that's fine. That's not an issue. But when I think of like traditional horror, you kind of get skulls and a weird burial, ground thing. And I think it's pretty cool. I think Sid Haig's death is cool, but like you said, Brian, that you can't necessarily see it all. You hear a lot. And the sound, like you mentioned, fantastic. I noticed that throughout the movie. Even little noises like fire cracking in the back, when they're on the frontier, I think is really just well done on the sound. I hated that Sid Haig got killed off so fucking early. Jesus. Also, Matthew Fox is the man. Like, he does it. He's so great at this character to me. And part of the reason is because it's nuanced. They kind of break a trope later that I really love that they do. And I'll save it for when the scene comes, but it involves Matthew Fox. And so I'm just a really big fan of that. I wouldn't pay that man to play me fucking anything. His drunk ass. He would sound like shit. I ain't paying you diddly fucking do. Anyway.
It's James Tolkien. I'll pay him whatever he asks for.
Oh dear God. Hey, but shout out to my man who it took me a rewatch to even realize who it was. Richard motherfucking Jenkins, my man.
Hell yeah!
In one of the best movies we've reviewed, Cabin in the Woods. He's great there. He's great in Step Brothers. Good stuff, man. No, so just a great all around cast. They were eating corn chowder, and right now, man, I'm about to millennial myself, if you don't mind. But the corn chowder right now that you can get at Panera or excuse me, sandwich place that doesn't advertise with us is fucking phenomenal. So that's what I thought of when I saw this corn chowder, which I'm sure had to be better than whatever Kurt Russell was cooking up. No offense to Kurt. So, I have it in my notes here, but I've already kind of talked about it. There's just some really slow dialogue scenes. I think them kind of eating dinner at the table was one of those. It's not that I don't like the dialogue. I just kind of wish it was shorter, if that makes sense. It just kind of goes on. Patrick Wilson is great here. He's great in most things. And I like his character because he kind of plays this same guy outside of the Conjurings. He kind of plays the same guy in most movies, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think kind of just a really good job here. Um, I have it in my notes. I already used my joke. Damn it, the Kurt Russell showing David Arquette how proper police work is done. So that's good. You know, I like the interaction with Patrick Russell or goddamn Patrick Russell. Listen to me, Patrick Wilson and Lily Simmons. I like their interaction. I think it's good. The sex scene has the funny line from her where he puts it in a little bit and she said, "Please continue." I thought that was great. And Brother Destin pointed that
Please
out as well
continue.
in his note. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's just it's hilarious. A needed moment of levity in the movie. I like that they kind of established they're really in love with each other early. My only thing is this bullet extraction scene runs really really long to me. I don't know what it is. It just I kind of wish it again just some slower dialogue that I don't necessarily really need in my. I feel like they could have cut that down some. Um, I wrote why I wrote this in my notes. I'll never know. But I wrote older people fucking nice because Kurt Russell and his wife are kissing in the kitchen.
What?
What he did the night before. She talked about it. Good for you, Kurt. Good for you, buddy. All right, I may take a little heat for this. Kurt Russell is great in this film. The acting is phenomenal, but his voice does not fit what I want from a western, which is not very much at all. He kind of man. I'm just saying. I lo- I don't know what it is, but to me, he has the one voice that just kind of stands out, which I guess isn't a bad thing if that's your thing. I'm just talking about for personal preference. His voice does not match the character for some reason to me. Doesn't mean it's not great. Doesn't mean his acting's not great. Just his voice reminds me of John Wayne playing an Asian. But
Holy shit.
hey, did he not? Did he not play Genghis Khan? Thank you very much. Um, Happy Thanksgiving, pilgrims. Okay, anyway, yeah. So one more quick note I have is the scene at the saloon after she's abducted is one of my favorite scenes in this entire movie. The intensity
Yeah.
the intensity from everyone's acting, the way the light comes through the windows of the saloon, beautifully shot. Um, and again, everyone's just emotions there are so good, and you could tell something really big happened here. Also, fuck the mayor's wife. She's a bitch. That's all I get. Oh, I do like Kurt Russell's line about you talk about horses again. I'll slap your head. Whatever it says, it's great. Again, much needed levity there. Badass line. So, yep, that's all I have. And I included a lot here because, spoiler alert, there's a good chunk coming up where I just don't have a ton of notes, guys. Sorry.
Hey, I want to say you brought up Patrick Wilson. Like I'll say the first time I watched this movie, which I mean, if you guys have listened to our old episodes, you know how long and why it took me so long to watch any of the Conjuring or any of the Insidious movies. And so I was very raw, I guess, or I didn't really. I knew Patrick Wilson was, but I didn't really know who Patrick Wilson was. And so the first time I watched this movie, I was like kind of honestly disappointed that spoiler alert, he survives and Kurt Russell, I love that guy, doesn't. And so, but now upon rewatch and having seen him and kind of honestly like fell in love with Patrick Wilson in all Conjuring movies and Insidious and everything else, that like watching this, it made this movie better for me, as weird as that sounds.
All right. Chicory and Nick are playing checkers at the jail, and Chicory can't beat him. Sheriff finds a blonde hair from Purvis as evidence. John shows up with Samantha, and they open up the jail cell. His chains can't be removed because he buried things covered in blood. Sheriff tells Chicory to go home and rest, and he tells Nick to stay with Samantha to help her out. She asks the sheriff to touch base with her husband. Nick heats up a bowl of water, and the sheriff gets to Arthur's house to let him know about Samantha being at the jail. And then Arthur wishes the sheriff's wife well after a severe cold. Arthur gets the letter and reads aloud his emotions he wrote her from Wyoming. I wrote it's basically just how Samantha keeps him warm and everything reminds him of her and how much he misses her. Samantha extracts the bullet from Purvis's leg, and he says his body feels like cotton. She gave him some opium. We hear horses acting up outside now and horns blowing. A young shepherd goes to the barn to check it out, and he calls for Mr. Wallington. He gets an axe to the neck and an arrow to the head. Arthur wakes up and calls for Samantha, who still isn't home. Next morning, Sheriff tells his wife he'd make breakfast, but she says she feels better. Clarence comes into his house with a situation to tell him about. He found his stable boy all tore up dead. Nobody was at the jail. It was completely empty. Sheriff Chicory and Clarence all head to the stable now. He calls out he's Sheriff Hunt and to identify yourself or he'll shoot you dead. They enter the stable and Sheriff sees the dead stable boy and his intestines on the ground. They head to the jail now. It's empty. Samantha, Nick, and Purvis are all gone. They find an arrow and Chicory asks if it's Indians. Chicory is sent to find the professor and meet them at the Learned Goat. Sheriff has to go talk to Arthur first. Sheriff gets to Arthur's house and he asks if his wife is still at the jail. He tells him that she was abducted by Indians. Arthur power walks as good as I've ever seen someone on a broken leg to meet everyone at the Learned Goat. Mr. Wallington asks about his horses, and Sheriff says he'll smack him if he asks about them again. The professor says the tribe has no name and they're troglodytes, inbred cannibals who kill their own mothers. Bartender provides them a map. The mayor and his wife show up and ask why they weren't told. The professor shows them on the map where the Indians are. It's several days away. Sheriff Arthur Chicory and John Bruder are all going on the trip. John feels guilty because he fetched Samantha, and then he says he's killed more Indians than anyone here. All right, Brian, that's the extra scenes. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, and I know I kind of brought this up earlier, but I actually have it in my notes right here because this is kind of where it starts. But, I would understand, however, vehemently disagree with anyone saying that the character development in this first part of this movie drug on, because I really, at least with me, feel like it really helps me be invested later in these cats, as they kind of face what's coming to them. I feel like it makes it better later on anyway. Now, with that said, Arthur reading that letter he wrote to his wife could have been cut to me. It didn't really do anything. Now, if he'd have read it in front of her, that may have been different, or even just read it silently for a few seconds and mumbled, that's not a poem. Like you said in the movie, it would have been just as effective to me. I think that kind of drug on, and for it not to pay off later, spoiler alert. So I don't know if there was a cut scene later or whatever, but the fact that doesn't pay off, I felt like, maybe there should have been something later on, and maybe cut something else. But I felt like that was a missed opportunity. Buford getting his throat slashed and bone knife through the head just kind of reminds me that I wanted to say, the violence in this movie, I was not prepared for the first time I saw it. You almost get lulled into this sense of security, kind of, knowing you're in a Western, which is, weird because of how violent the 1800s were, but it was never really depicted that way beyond gunshots or arrows in the movies. So to me, this shit hits you with that quick violence, which is pretty damn realistic. I will have to say, I tried the line, "Why are you in my breakfast?" this past week with my wife, who's, by the way, used to my shit by now, and just said, "You're an idiot," and walked out. But love that line. Amazing acting by Russell in the jail cell scene. Kind of how little stuff like he stopped mid-sentence whenever he noticed Mrs. O'Dwyer's bag, which is such a subtle little thing, but just a beautiful touch, I thought. That, and when he tells Arthur about his wife, and he kind of he and Arthur takes off, it took the time to show him walk over, shut the door, get his boots for him. It's just more details that I really appreciated. Now, I could also see, though, if you're okay, I really didn't need to see that. I get that. Also, shout out to a friend of the show, Jason Newlander, the mayor. He talks about this scene in the Learned Goat and working with Kurt Russell in our interview with the former Frog Brother on don'tgoouthere.com. But he actually said that this is one of his favorite movies he's ever worked on. So, and you can see why, especially in this scene, and Mike kind of touched on it. This whole scene in the bar is just so well written. and there's no soundtrack. It's just, to me, it's just really realistic, how the whole thing plays out. I do wish we would have gotten Jay Tavares' sharp teeth to come along with them. The Having Indians portrayed, as savages for so long, from back then and in movies, having that perspective as they kind of come across these troglodytes, I think that would have been interesting to me. Now, I think it's pretty super powerful here with him saying, "Y'all are fucked. I'm not going." But I think I would have liked to have seen that. I think and seen him go along. Um, anyway, that's all I had for the set of scenes.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on some of this stuff in the last set of scenes, which is my fault for jumping ahead of my notes. I guess I just really want to talk about that saloon scene. But no, so some of this just kind of drags until we get to that saloon scene, though. I like the discovery of finding out she's been abducted. I kind of touched on the bullet extraction scene in the jail cell and all that stuff already. But like I like I really just love everything about from the moment that Kurt Russell discovers that Mrs. Dwyer has been abducted. I love all that. I think that's it's phenomenal acting. There's something happening the whole time. To me, once that it's kind of like we're kicking it in another gear. I love when he walks up on Patrick Wilson's door and tells him, and they go to the saloon. Like not to hit home on the exact same thing because I don't. I mean, outside of that scene, I don't have a ton to say. But you're right. I wish that they would have had an Indian in there, kind of breaking another trope. But that's neither here nor there. The crew they sent was pretty damn perfect. But again, on that saloon scene, the way it's shot, the lighting, everything, so damn good. Probably my favorite scene in the movie, for sure. Just great stuff. But that's pretty much all I have because I kind of touched on everything in the last set of scenes. But yeah, that's it.
All right, Arthur gets home and loads up on ammo. He gets the poem and says, "You'll hear it soon." The sheriff's wife asks if he believes they're alive. He tells her there isn't an option and he has to go. She asks him to please come back in a very scared voice. Chicory puts some flowers on his wife's grave and tells her of his mission. He says he'll see her back here or up high. Sheriff tells Arthur we're only resting the bare minimum and we ain't going back for him if the horses die on the long trip. The only advantage they have over them is their own intelligence. They take off on their horses. They take a quick pit stop at a pond for the horses to drink. The men stop to make camp and John sets up a rope with bells for protection. Shoot anything that approaches them. John makes a joke that smart men don't get married and brags of all the women who want him. The men eat dinner now over a campfire, then lay down to rest. Chicory asks Sheriff if he can read a book in the bath and rambles on about how he can't do it. He tells him to get a music stand and a towel by the bath so he can read in the bath. He tells him good night, and we hear the bells ring, and John shoots immediately, and then we hear a dog whimpering. Next day, back on the horses and another stop to get water. Chicory thinks Arthur's behavior is suspicious. Arthur shoots a snake in a tree, then sits on the ground to tend to his broken leg. He painfully removes his boot and apologizes to God for his foul language. He rolls his sock down and pours opium on a towel and applies it to the wound. Sheriff asks him how his leg's doing and asks for the opium so he doesn't spill it on their horse rides. Arthur apologizes to Chicory for yelling at him. The men stop and make camp. Sheriff asks Chicory if Arthur's leg infection could become gangrene and if he's ever done an amputation. A man approaches and they pull all their guns. They order both men to strike a match to reveal themselves. He makes them drop their guns and approach. John shoots both men and he and the sheriff, they point at each other. John said they were scouts or thieves. He says they need to pack up and make a cold camp and he can question his morals later. Chicory tells Arthur what happened and gives him some pork and beans. They pack camp up and John finds a spot for them to camp that's shielded on one side. All right, Brian, that's the next two scenes I got. What you got, man?
Yeah, Mike kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but I really want to as well. Like, I want to point out Richard Jenkins. Like, he's been so good in this movie up till now as well. But just his scene with his deceased wife, like at her grave, his delivery, he's such a goddamn good actor in like anything he's in, dramatic roles. And you know, say what you want. I think he's some of the funniest, if not the funniest part of Step Brothers. You know, and he stole scenes from Will Ferrell and John C. Riley. I mean, that shit's just unheard of. And he does it again here in just a cast that's ridiculous. I thought he was tremendous. You know, there's a line here where Russell tells O'Dwyer, "Pain is how the body talks to you. You do well to listen to it." I would have loved to have seen Arthur just say, "Shut the fuck up." Now, I don't think "shut the fuck up" is a very period specific, but it was what I was thinking for old Arthur here anyway. You know, there's a scene with them riding right after that went on, I think, way too long. Like, I think that definitely could have been cut down. Um, and I also meant to mention this last scene with Fox and his like, "It's not a boast, it's just a fact" line. But Fox's John Bruder character, I think, is so good. Like, he's so arrogant to the point where you think like, okay, this Joker's going to flip on them, and you know he's going to become a bad guy or a piece of shit later, but he never does. He's just arrogant, and you know why they'll not. I mean, I like that they didn't go that route. You know, we have enough of an antagonist and all the antagonists we can ask for. We don't need another wrench thrown in. But he's got such great little subtle jabs, like, you know, "I'll probably beat you to the draw, but you can try." Or when he says, you know, "I'm probably the most intelligent man here," and his reasoning was because he wasn't married. That was great. You know, I also love the line where John asks, "Are any of you somnambul?" I don't even know how he said it. Somnambulists. And Chicory hits back with the "That's private," not knowing what at all that meant. I laughed my ass off, even not knowing what the word meant right off the top of the bat until he, you know, explained it later. You know, one of the very few laughs and character bonding moments, like especially with Patrick Wilson, you know, breaking down as he prays. But the calm before the storm, and you know, kind of the last of that you'll get with the remainder of this as we're about to like really get into the shit. You know, and again, you know, some people think this stuff is boring, you know, and I can understand that point of view. I love this kind of development when it's done right. You know, and another example of that is, you know, I'm a nerd out for a minute, but Star Trek Five. A lot of people don't like that movie at all, but there's a scene at the beginning or a campfire scene where they all just kind of sit around and talk, and it's some of the best character moments of the entire franchise. And it's stuff like that I don't know, I really appreciate that in movies. Um, Oh, and I love the "What do you see?" "A snake in a tree." "What kind?" "Deceased." I don't know. I just I thought that was so great. So anyway, I'll hand it off to someone I know reads literature while taking a bath and doesn't get the pages wet. Mr. Mike Settle, take it away.
That's because I use a Kindle, sir. Anyway, uh, no. So it again, it is not the dialogue; it is the amount of dialogue for me in this set of scenes. And that sounds nitpicky. Maybe it is fine, but some of these scenes some of this just kind of runs a little long in the tooth for me. But there is some good stuff here. I mean, I, you know, I like I like the four that we get. I like their interactions. I like their chemistry. I love Bruder here, and part of the reason is because it would, and I'm not the only one that's pointed this out. It would have been so easy and very predictable to have John Bruder turn on these three somewhere along the way because he is an arrogant prick. But they didn't do it. He ended up being arrogant but a good dude, and I like that about his character. Um, and it works so well, and I know he creates a dynamic between the group that I think would be missing if he wasn't there. So just a very important character to me. Has some great one-liners about how he's the smartest or he's the most intelligent out of all of them. That's funny. Him and Chicory going back and forth is really good stuff. But it just runs long, and that's really what it is. I like some of the stuff where he. First of all, kudos to Patrick Wilson's acting, selling the shit out of it. He sold this leg like Ric Flair sold every wrestling move ever. Like it was just he was in brutal pain. So I will give him a lot of props there. I mean, throughout the entire film, you'd never forget that his leg is screwed up, and I like that. Again, good acting, And the stuff with the opium and the going back and forth, that's good stuff. It just runs on long for me, is really all it is. But there's not a lot of bad here. It's just long. And sometimes it's my attention span. It's not anybody else's fault that I apparently can't lock in. For some movies I can, and some movies I can't. And for this movie I can. I just kind of felt like it ran a little long is also. Again, I love all four of these guys and their chemistry on screen. Like, if these four did a sequel to this movie, well, you can't do it, spoiler. But if they did a prequel to this movie, I would watch it.
All right, the men are laying down, and Chicory says John shouldn't have shot at the Mexicans. And then John, with a great line, says Jesus should have protected them. Later that night, we hear stabbing noises, and Arthur shoots at someone ambushing them. All the horses are gone now, and John's prize horse was hurt. He approaches the maimed horse, and against his own will, he thanks it for its service and puts it down. The valley is 2 days away, and Arthur says he'll try and keep pace and catch up when they sleep. They all will compact their gear to the essentials. Chicory tells him to be extra careful. One fall and you could lose that leg. Arthur marches on to the valley. Next day, Sheriff calls for Arthur and asks if he's well. Arthur stumbles a little and tells them to mark the road with 4 stones and he'll catch up eventually. He finds the other men laying down and he's approaching camp. He lays down to get some rest until twilight. Sheriff wakes him and Chicory says they got him some water and gave him some trail snacks. John says he'll refrain from flirting with his wife if he arrives first, and Arthur punches him and falls to the ground in pain. Arthur is terrified of what those savages could be doing to her. Chicory asks for the medical kit to examine the leg. Sheriff tells him he's staying back because of his leg and blames the sheriff for shooting the drifter and getting his wife involved. Arthur sees how bad his leg is and that Chicory has to take the leg. He yells and says it's his choice and you're not taking the leg. He asks if he can see it. He asks Sheriff to mark the route so he can follow along just in case something happens to them. Sheriff says we won't leave without Samantha after he takes some opium. Chicory gets a small hammer out to set the leg, and it cuts to a mountain shot. At dusk, the 3 leave, Arthur asleep on the ground to recover. The men hear a horn blowing in the distance. John says he believes he heard that the night of the kidnappings in Bright Hope. Chicory asks John how many Indians he killed, and he says not enough. John hates Indians because they killed his mother and sister. Next day, Sheriff leaves a mark on the trail as John and Chicory look through the German for the valley. The men find footprints on the ground and follow them, thinking it could be Mr. Wallington. They hear the horn blow again and hike on. Sheriff and Chicory follow along to find John. John looks through the German and sees a hole in the cave. Arrows are shot at them and they're stormed by these Indians. Sheriff shoots them and kills them, but John is severely wounded. Sheriff is hit in the arm by an arrow. John asks for dynamite and for them not to return here until he's used it. He says he's far too vain to live as a cripple and asks for a cigar. He tells Chicory he's killed 116 Indians. Sheriff tells him they'll make sure that this has value as John begins to shake and accept his fate. He grabs a rifle and pushes the Indian body over. He shoots the gun at an Indian as something is thrown at him. All right, Brian, that's the next 2 scenes I got.
The opening moment in this group of scenes with Bruder's horse Saucy, that's just that's just it's a sense of atmosphere that you don't get in many westerns. Like, I mean, unless you're named Unforgiven, but it's kind of that first sense of dread in this movie that you really like have creeping in before the third act of this movie really starts, and I thought it was tremendous. Something else I wanted to point out is cinematography. Zoller really knew what he wanted to show and what sense he wanted to give you. I mean, yeah, the shaky cam puts you first person, makes you feel like you're in the action. I mean, that's a given. But the little subtle shit he did, like the horizon, like the ground, like it goes from green at the beginning of this movie and hilly to flat to dry, dusty. Obviously, the cave. It's a very subtle change that I thought was just so brilliant. John's line, that in no way affects the endeavors of your mouth. Fantastic. I'm using that on my kid tomorrow, by the way. Great tension build up as they walk through the valley, and the sheriff has that stopwatch as you're waiting for John. You're seeing it almost from their point of view. Not almost, you're seeing it from their point of view, and with the cinematography. So when they get ambushed, like you feel like you got ambushed, and it's so fucking quick. Just like you see any activity in there, and then bam, 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 no fucking music playing, nothing, just holy shit. And you don't even like see his damn arm cut off, like in his hands, like just laying there by the repeater. The camera wasn't just like sitting on his arm, waiting to show you that. Again, like that's just the violence in this movie. It's not romanticized. It's not some like celebration of violence like most horror movies. They any other horror movie would have just sat there and shown you his hand and zoomed in, and you get to see it being cut off. This one, it was like just an afterthought because it's just so fucking real, quick, brutal. I loved it. And, in John's death, just laying there, and he was like shaking from the pain. I thought Matthew Fox does a tremendous job there. But that's all I had for that group of scenes.
Yeah. So again, I'm not going to hamper on the dialogue running long again because at least in this set of scenes, like you mentioned, Brian, you get a sense of, you use the word dread, and that's, pretty apt. That's pretty fitting because to me, it's where the movie kind of takes a horror turn a little bit. Still get some Western stuff, especially with the cinematography and then walking across the valley and stuff. But this is really where you get where, if you look this movie up on Google, it says Western dash horror. This is where that kind of starts to creep in a little bit. Yeah. With the death, the shooting the Mexicans and all that stuff. It really starts to kind of turn up a notch here. And so I like that about these scenes. I like the atmosphere of these scenes. I don't necessarily like how long they go, but up until we get them being ambushed. And I think, like you mentioned, it shot so well. The first time I ever watched, it made me jump a little bit because I wasn't really expecting that. And again, you've mentioned it, and I'm pretty sure, Brother Dustin has the same idea, and I think Nico will too. The violence in this movie is very realistic. It's very brutal. It sounds real. It sounds like you're watching one of those surgery shows on Discovery Health Channel. Like it's not there to make it romanticized, like you mentioned. It's there to make you cringe, and it does. And this is kind of the character thing I was talking about with John Bruder, where his character would typically have turned by now in a lot of movies,
right?
And he goes out admirably, a good man, and I think that's so different, so well done. I love that narrative. I love that his last request is a cigar. So very 1800s, because that will speed up any death now. All the shit they put in those cigars. But it's not that I don't like these set of scenes. I just kind of wish they were quicker, like a lot of the other stuff. But again, really love everything from when they start getting ambushed on. I love the violence. I love the way this tribe looks, by the way. Just a unique, just something different as far as a movie's villain. I think it's done really well, the makeup and everything. So the next two sets of scenes, I really kind of pick it all back up, and I enjoy it a lot.
Chicory is shot in the arm with an arrow as they hike on, and the sheriff shoots him. Two other Indians ambush him and knock Chicory unconscious. I think it's a bone is stuck in the sheriff's mouth as he's being strangled. He's hit in the head and knocked out. They drag the men to the cliff with a hole in it and screech. Ropes are thrown to them, and they tie the men up and are pulled up the cliff. They force them into these cages as they see Nick and Samantha in another cage. He asks Samantha if she's hurt, but she replies, "I'm alive." Nick is severely hurt, and they ate the drifter, Purvis. An Indian walks in the room and lets out a loud screech as Chicory says they're in hell. They open up the cage and drag Nick out. Sheriff yells for Nick to wake up. They strip his clothes. The sheriff and Chicory try to break free, but he gets hit in the hand by a bone. Nick tells Sheriff his name was Purvis. He killed lots of people and desecrated the burial ground. He asks that his possessions get back to Michigan to his brother. They scalp him now as the others look on in horror, and they hammer this bone into his mouth. Sheriff says all these cannibals will be massacred as his body is axed in half from the groin. We see the Indian eating a limb as he walks away. Chicory asks if it's true about the cavalry, but it was a lie. He says if it was happening to him, that's all he'd want to hear. Samantha asks, how's Arthur? And they tell him his leg got hurt yesterday, but they left a trail for him. She asks why they do that. Sheriff says they didn't know what would lead to this. Sheriff tells her they've killed 3, and they ask how many are in the clan. She says 12 males and 2 pregnant females who are blind cripples. Sheriff asks Chicory if he has the whiskey flask. He asks Samantha how many they can poison with 2 fingers worth of opium. And then that's the next 2 scenes he got, and the next 2 are the ending. Go ahead, Brian.
I don't really have a whole lot about this just because I was just mostly in shock watching this little set of scenes. But I'll say the shot from the ground of the sheriff and Chicory being drugged, amazing shot. And you're also put like looking out of those cages like from the ground again, in a first person perspective. It's just it was a very good cinematography there. I thought, Chicory saying "we're in hell." I said out loud. I mean, I was like, hey, "That's a very good description," because shit. I mean, and just listening to like the deputy, I can't remember his name, and the sheriff talk about his possessions and what he can do with them real fast. Like just amazing acting by both of them, especially Russell right there. But Jesus Christ, like showing him being split in half, it for real almost made me gag. Like I was not prepared for that. I mean, when I watch the Terrifier, I know it's coming. Like you can see it coming. Like even if you hadn't watched the movie, it's set right up for you. But I did not see this one coming. And this I may sound like a prude, especially being a horror movie guy, but I've said this before, so I'm not going to change my stance just because I like this movie. But I mean, it's just a little too far for like what I want to see. Some people are like, oh, that's fucking awesome. Like, that's great. I want to see it. But I just, I don't, to me, it's just as effective. Like if you would have just cut away, like I don't need to see it. I didn't need to see the skin snap back. And it's just as he was torn in half. And, it's just, I don't know. But I will say Russell afterwards, just how he looked like just deflated, just, defeated. He was just done after seeing all of that. I thought that was just amazing acting. And lastly, like what a great line by Miss O'Dwyer when she said, "This is why frontier life's so difficult, not the Indians or the elements, but because of the idiots." Yeah, that's how I feel about Twitter. Go ahead, Mike.
I literally have that in my notes. I said that is just like social media, so same thing. Okay, so there is not a whole lot more to say about this set of scenes besides that kill. So I'm just gonna get right to it. Although I do like a little bit of the the way they kind of get Russell into the cave and into the cell and stuff. That was kind of a cool shot. But anyway, okay. So to me, I really like this kill for a couple of reasons. One, you mentioned the acting leading up to it. It's great. It's phenomenal. Kind of tugs at your heart a little bit, or tries to. And again, I did not see it coming. For one, they scalp the man, and I've seen Inglourious Bastards about a million times, so that's no problem. 100 Nancy scalps, no issue for me. But then they jam the bone in his throat, which I'm like, ooh, that's brutal. Sound perfect there. Then you're watching and you see him hanging upside down. And I thought, like you, maybe, Brian, that they were going to cut away. But then they don't cut away.
No, they don't.
and look, here's the difference between what Terrifier did and what this movie did. This is realistic in a way, as realistic as a kill like that can be. Right. Because obviously some of the Terrifier, like some of that kill is a little bit tongue in cheek, a little over the top on purpose. Right. You get, that's very 80s gory slasher because she's naked and she's split in half, and it's, there's a, penis reference with that one. This is just a straight up brutal kill. And I'm going to go the complete opposite of you, Brian. I fucking love it, man, because to me, in any other movie almost, it adds nothing but a gory, gruesome kill. In this movie, it is so brutal because these that these people, this tribe are savages, but with that kill, they are really savage, and they are just an incredible threat to the people that are left. And not that I necessarily needed it, but I'm glad it was there, which is a weird thing to say about a man getting split in half. But I thought it was awesome. And I already touched on the line about the idiots, but I had that wrote down. I just thought that was a great line of dialogue.
All right. Next two scenes are the ending. Arthur wakes up and begins to hike onwards. He falls down a cliff, groaning in pain. He nods off on his cane and then hears a whistling noise. He falls to the ground and pulls his gun. He begins to crawl now and he lays down in a little cubby hole. He drinks the last few drops of water and he places his hat over his face to sleep. Sheriff and Chicory now start their plan to set up the Indians. Chicory begs for a drink from the flask. The Indians take it and drink. The first Indian drinks some and spits some of it out on the flames. The second Indian drinks, and the third throws the flask into the embers. Samantha says the one with the wolf skull will lose consciousness, the second will die, and the third nothing will happen. Samantha says her husband will have to face 7 of them while being crippled. We see 2 Indians approach Arthur and shoot arrows at him. He kills the first easily, but misses the second, but he manages to reload quick enough to shoot him dead before being attacked. Arthur crawls to the Indian and finds something in his neck. He cuts it out and puts it in his pocket. He marches onwards towards his wife. He hears a screeching and sees where they were captured. He crawls onward and pulls out the whistle from his pocket. He blows into the whistle and another Indian runs at him, and he shoots him. He sees he's still breathing and gives him another bullet. He sees the burial ground and asks above, "You see this?" Sheriff asks Samantha if she's eaten anything, and she says very little, and he says she should eat that bird they gave her. The 3 begin to talk about the flea circus, and Chicory is tickled when Samantha confirms it's all authentic. We hear another loud roar, and the Indian drags the dead one in there. They release the sheriff, and he tackles one of them, but is quickly seized. Chicory calls for him, but they cut on his side, like on his ribcage area, and shove the flaming hot flask into his wound in his ribcage. They put a foot on the sheriff's throat and try to shoot his groin, but can't figure out how to reload the gun. We hear the whistle, and the Indian goes to look, and we hear gunshots. Sheriff yells for Arthur. Then the sheriff is shot in his stomach area. Sheriff grabs the tomahawk and cuts his foot in half. Arthur enters and shoots the Indian. Sheriff then decapitates the Indian's head with the tomahawk. They ask Arthur how many he's killed, and Sheriff says there's at least 3 more. They ask Sheriff if he's going to be okay, but he says no. Sheriff tells Chicory to escort them home. He asks Arthur to put the rifle in his hands. He tells him to leave how he came in. They thank the sheriff as they leave. Sheriff tells Chicory to say goodbye to my wife, and he'll say hello to his wife. He orders Chicory out and reloads the gun. They pass by the 2 women sex slaves and head back down the trail. We hear a loud whistle as the 3 hike along. Overhead shot of Arthur, Samantha, and Chicory walking through the burial ground. Arthur stumbles, and we hear gunshots as Arthur and Samantha share a kiss. And the film ends as Chicory throws the rock to the ground he just picked up. All right, go ahead, Brian. That's the ending. What'd you think?
Kind of split on it, honestly. Great line by Jenkins when the troglodytes are spitting out the opium, and he says, "It's got to taste better than people." I laughed at that. I thought that was funny. And also, because I'm an asshole, after they said there were 7 left, I counted. The rest of the time. I said, "All right, there's 5 left. All right, there's 2 left." And you know what? They did not mess that up. I was impressed. Also, it's such a moving scene too with Jenkins, the flea circus. Like, you really get the feeling that they really truly believe that they're about to die. Not like in other movies. Like, it really gives you that dread. It makes you feel that and empathize with that dread that they're feeling at the moment.
Easy for you to say, pal.
No kidding. And all right, so this is the part I didn't really like, and if you've listened to the show before, you'll know why. But why I do love the sheriff getting his revenge. He was, he survived too long for one thing. Like, there's no way that stuff's happening to you. and you don't just pass out from the pain you just endured. So I didn't like that. And, I'm not a fan of a head chop. Like, unless you're Tyler Maines, Michael Myers, or you're zombie Jason, you're not one or two swipe, cutting somebody's head off. I don't care what you have. And the dude had like a bone saw. Well, I don't, bone saw, Spider-Man reference. But yeah, no, I'm not a fan of that part at all. I felt like that they just wanted to kind of give Russell more of a hero's ending, and it was good. He endured too much. It stopped being realistic to me, and it took me out of it. Now, and also, I 100% did not need to see those nasty ass pregnant females. Super gross. Well, great line by Russell when he said, "Say goodbye to my wife. I'll say hello to yours." Such a great fucking line. Very moving. And you know what? I'll say this. This is the last thing I'll say about this ending. The movie's so damn bleak, like especially for like Wilson's character. I mean, the dude's like crippled the whole movie. He's struggling. Like you feel his struggle the whole movie. So I feel like his win is so earned. Like I love it. I love the fact that he wins, and I'm glad that this movie did not give me that a bad ending. Like I was like, oh man, I hope that they don't all just die and that's the end of this. But that kiss with his wife was super, super gross. Like he just rubbed a little dirty water on it and acted like it was cleaned off, from putting that nasty ass shit out of their throats in his mouth. Super gross. But this is where I was talking about earlier that I think that they could have played back up off that poem that he brought with him. Like it would have been a better moment, I think, than that whole like kissing scene. But all in all, like I said, it was a good ending. There was just some parts that I wish would have been different to make it almost perfect.
Yeah, we're pretty identical on this set. I like the same things you do, and I kind of dislike some of the same things. I love that Arthur returns. Again, he's been selling that leg the whole movie. So, like you mentioned, his win being earned, I'm pulling for this man. He's the only hope left. And I think, he gets his revenge, and I think it's fantastic the way he shows up there and does work. You're right about Kurt Russell's death, though. It took a really long time for me, just too drawn out. I mean, he got shot, and he had a lot of other injuries going on, and I just feel like he had one too many last gasps for breath there, and especially with him being able to take someone's whole ass head off, like he's, like it's that terrible movie Jason Takes Manhattan or something. That's just not. It's just unnecessary. But it was still a cool visual, so I'm here for it. I just know that that's not very probable. So, yeah. But I love this victory. And again, you mentioned the movie's very bleak. It is a dark film, but it has a little bit of light at the end. I love it. I love how and normally I complain when a movie's lighting is a little too dark. This movie hits that line very, very perfect with the way the movie is kind of shot here at the end. But again, really good ending. I'm glad that Arthur was the one that survived all along. I think him and Chicory kind of make it out okay. And if all three of them lived, I feel like it would have been a little bit without some consequence to just have one of them die. So I understand it. And like you mentioned, that is a great fucking line about say bye to my wife, I'll say hello to yours. That is fantastic. I completely agree with that. Bones on the ground, huh? Oh, sorry.
Ooh yeah.
Y'all got any more final thoughts on the inning?
Yeah, dig it. Oh, okay.
No.
Before we jump into fun facts, I'm just going to read a few we don't have any questions. I'm just going to read a few comments from our Instagram. Real Matt Sear said, "Sneaky good cast in this one. Brutal film." I would agree with that. Danny C. Naps, she just commented that she loves this movie. And Dawn Golden 30 commented that Sid Haig is amazing in this film. for what little bit you got, yeah, he was great. I wish they were like everyone else. A little bit more Sid Haig would have been nice. Uh, all right. Let's jump into our fun facts real quick. I'll
Do
just
it.
knock mine out real quick. The film was shot in 21 days.
I saw that. Yeah.
Matthew Fox has said that he enjoyed making this movie more than any other film and always wanted to be in a Western. S. Craig Zoller wrote the script in 2007. And the last one I have is, before choosing Southern California, the producers considered the possibility of shooting the movie in New Mexico and Utah. Whoever else has fun facts, go ahead. I know Brother Dustin has a couple.
Yes, so Brother Dustin had a few fun facts here. Timothy Oliphant was originally cast to play John Bruder. That would have been interesting. It would have been a different take on the character. I liked Tim Oliphant, especially the more he's in stuff. So I would have at least liked to see that. But I'm glad that Matthew Fox gets that. The cave from the last act is the same set where Tony Stark is held captive and built his first Iron Man suit in the first Iron Man film. So I actually get that reference. Hooray for me in my non-Marvel watching that. Brian, any fun facts?
I do not. I said mine during this show.
Okay. The movie had a $1.8 million budget. So that's beans, by the way.
Right.
And the box office, unfortunately, was $481,525. So not great.
Jeez.
Box office. That's American. I couldn't. International box office sales is the same. So but between video sales and DVD sales, it made about $5 million rounded up. So
That's crazy that you get a cast like that and you only spend $1.5 million on the entire movie. Like
Right.
People just must have wanted to just do it.
And it didn't make beans. So
Right.
just a movie that you want to be a part of, and they're all probably pretty proud of.
Right.
Man, I can't. Honestly, though, I don't even remember this release. But it was only just a few years ago. I don't even remember the advertising for this movie. Maybe they just didn't have enough budget for advertising. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they must
probably
not
what it
have.
was. Yeah. Well, it was the director's first feature-length film. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I know it's built up a big cult following and a big fan base, though.
Yes.
Regardless of that,
And that's why the domestic video sales are almost about $5 million on their own. So that's it made its budget back.
oh yeah. And I watched the making of Bone Tomahawk. All the actors absolutely loved being on set for this movie too. So maybe it was just a little a movie they did for themselves. I've heard a lot of actors do movies for themselves, as they call it. So,
Right.
All right, let's jump into our favorite kill, least favorite kill, and the rating. I'll go ahead and just go first. My favorite kill, I picked the troglodyte that Kurt Russell kills. I really like that kill. My least favorite, I just picked Purvis because it was off screen. I mean, you didn't see him get kidnapped and you didn't see him get eaten, so that was my least favorite. All right, my rating, I wrote, this movie has a star-studded cast that did a great job. It's got a nice setting, a mood, and feel. However, I'm self-admitted not a Western movie fan, even with the horror feel to it. Mike's intro is kind of, I think he read my notes, or I read his. I think it's too long and gets very monotonous in the middle part of the movie. Sheriff says we won't be stopping much, but we get over 30 minutes of them stopping and camping. Even though I like the actors in the film, I'm not emotionally invested with them, honestly. There's a lot of off-screen I think that should have been on-screen to help that. For example, Purvis and Samantha being kidnapped. I think that would have made me care more about Samantha being kidnapped. Patrick Wilson's broken leg was funny to me as well. He can walk on it and ride a horse with little pain, but removing his boot was the most painful thing ever. If you go back and listen to our Orphan review and Brian's rating, I agree with what he says for this film. I think it's well acted and made, but did I enjoy watching it? Not really. But I gave it a 5.5.
Okay, I'm gonna let Brian go last. I'll go twice in a row real quick so I can give Brother Dustin's thoughts. He's having some internet issues this evening, so he couldn't join us. His favorite kill is the same as yours, Nico. The troglodyte that Kurt Russell kills. The brutality of it and the ultimate decapitation was awesome. His least favorite kill was Nick, which, while the scalping was intense and him being ripped in half was even more intense, it felt out of place. This movie could have survived just fine had that part been implied and done off screen. Felt forced in as shock value. The effects were great, but it was unnecessary. I could see it turning. I could see it turning a huge potential audience off. That's fair. Uh, General thoughts. Phenomenal cast. It has the GOAT, David Arquette. What the hell? Is he on drugs? And another GOAT, Sid Haig, albeit not nearly enough of him. Patrick Wilson is great. Richard Jenkins arguably turned in the best performance of the bunch. Yes, Dustin. Uh, as he was almost unrecognizable because of how well he acted. Matthew Fox was great. Side note, it's interesting that this was the last thing he's been in. That is weird. And Lily Simmons was great as well as gorgeous. Parts of the movie drug on a little longer than needed, but Kurt Russell was Kurt Russell and made it tolerable. While I enjoy the movie, I really only consider about 20 minutes of it to be horror. Fair enough. Tough movie to rate in that regard. I love Westerns and the cast is great, but for this show, I'm conflicted. Rating. I'll go with a 7.75. It could have been better, had some of the slow parts picked up more, but the cast is just too good to deduct too many points. Okay. As for me, my favorite kill is Nick for the reasons I listed. I thought it was brutal in the right way, not for shock value. I thought it was done in a more realistic way than something like, we mentioned for Terrifier. So I enjoyed it. My least favorite, because it took him off screen too goddamn early, was Sid Haig. Fuck that, man. God. More Sid in my life. R.I.P. to the GOAT, man. Again, I kind of summed up my general thoughts here. Great cast. Love the way it's shot. Cinematography, sound, lighting, all that is great. I'm not a Western guy, so 50 plus minutes of this movie just dragged for me. And it wasn't that I'm not into the characters. And the dialogue wasn't great. There's too much of it and too big of a chunk. And they could have maybe split up with some more stuff happening. So I'm a little torn because, like Brother Dustin said, the first 25 minutes of it are more horror, and the last 35 minutes have a very horror. And in the middle is like this Western. It's like it has horror buns with Western meat, and that's kind of the way I viewed it, which isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of the way the movie is. So I went with a 6.75. I actually like it. That's a high rating for me, especially because it is a Western, and a lot of Westerns I would probably not even watch. So I'm glad you made me watch it, Brian. And I would probably watch it again. I know I said that at the beginning, but there are some movies that we've done on this show that, quite frankly, I'll never turn on my TV again, like Bones, and I'll make fun of that because he's not here, but I'm sure he'll listen. But no, 6.75, which I feel is pretty respectable. Great cast. I feel like could have been a shorter movie. My rating would have been higher.
I gotcha. I don't really have a whole lot to say to summarize it. Anyway, I've kind of said most of it, but as far as my favorite kill, on Shocker, because of and Mike even mentioned in our group chat about my love of the neck slash, the opening kill in this movie where Arquette's cutting that unknown named the dude's neck, and it's just shocking, and I don't know, I loved it. I was like, oh shit, like that's fucking great. My least favorite kill and Dustin, if he was on, I guess would have had the same thoughts, obviously, as I did with Nick's kill, and how I agree with 100% with what he said, and maybe I didn't get across what I was trying to get across, but that's what I was trying to say, was that it kind of felt out of place, and I felt like you could have accomplished that by cutting away. Now, it was great effects, but I just kind of felt like it was unnecessary. I actually had a tie between that and Fox's kill. Like, I don't know, I guess I wanted an Aliens type death, where when he had the dynamite, I thought he was going to blow himself up, take a whole bunch of them with him, and then he ended up not even using it, and I guess dying, getting hit with the tomahawk and dying. So I was a little disappointed with kind of how he went out. I guess I wanted a little bit more to that. I think I said this last. Somebody will write in. Somebody wrote in the last time I got something wrong on this, but I know I'm going to be. I don't know. I should have checked, but I'm pretty sure I'm 6 or 7 movies in a row with an 8 or above. And that shit isn't changing this week. And let me tell you, spoiler alert, it definitely isn't changing next week either. But I gave this movie an 8. I love it. I love the slow parts. There's very little, and I said what I didn't care for here. I don't want to repeat myself, but there's very little that I didn't care for. So, I'm a Western guy, though. I loved it. I love Unforgiven, Tombstone. I love it. If you hadn't seen Tombstone, shame on you. Go watch it.
Spoiler alert: the 8 rating will end when he gets to my pick.
Oh, well, I've actually never. I have seen that, but it's been so long. Anyway, we'll get to it.
Yeah. I'm with you. But hell, I like the movie. I'm not giving it an 8. Spoiler alert.
I was gonna say, Nico, if you give that movie an 8, we have to sit down and have a talk.
I'm not. I promise. Where am I at? Oh, one last thought I was going to give on this movie before we move on was y'all mentioned Richard Jenkins tonight. He did great. He's probably my second favorite portrayal, but I'm going with John Bruder. I think Matthew Fox was the best actor in this movie.
He was great. Yeah.
I think he was the most invested in his character, honestly, and he said it was his favorite role. So I mean, you can see that.
Yeah, his character had the most. His character had the most layers and depth. So I really like that too. Yep.
Oh yeah.
And that's crazy. That's crazy. That was the last thing he was in. I did not know that. That's crazy.
Hey, Brian, hit his agent up. Let's see if we can get him on.
Oh, absolutely.
What's up, Coach Red Dawson? How you doing?
Yes, Red Dawson. His brother played at Florida State. Oh, sorry.
Mike, you ready to announce your pick next week? I can't believe you stole this pick from Brian.
Hey, we both love it equally the same. Don't do that. Damn it. I did steal it from Brian. Well, he didn't pick it fast enough.
I'm good with it. It's good.
He does all the off-the-wall picks sometimes. I got to bring us back to the logo. That's right. I'm bringing it back to this podcast logo. Not what you think coming from me. I am not picking a Halloween movie. We're not going back to Haddonfield. We are, however, going back to Crib Crystal Lake. We're going to go a little Friday 13th, 2009, a very controversial film for a lot of fans. So I'm interested to see their reaction to mine and Brian's reaction.
Well, if you tuned in to our Friday the 13th ranking show, you already know how much I love the movie.
Yeah.
Well, next week I really like the movie, but I am going to be a part of that. The critiquing part of it, and it's going to be a good discussion episode, like Absolutely. A lot of our slasher episodes are.
Right.
Yeah. Before we get out of here, I just wanted to I want to do a little quick giveaway, and I know we didn't really talk about this off air or anything like that. Right. But I want to. I have from our sponsor Loot Crate. I have a one of their newest fright crates. It's kind of a celebration of the older Universal monsters and especially the werewolves and Wolfman. And so I wanted to give back a little bit to the fans and kind of give somebody this Loot Crate that was, by the way, BF15. Use it when you go to lootcrate.com and you get 15% off and get us a little bit of love. But I wanted to give this away because our blood donors, and I know Nico's going to get into that, and thanking them has gone so well. And we want to keep that going, and we want to give back a little bit something to these fans. So if you'll DM any one of our social media accounts, don't go out there on Twitter, don't go out there underscore on Instagram, don't go out there on Facebook, anything, and just tell us the first episode that Brother Dustin came on the show, and you will, and you will, I will mail you this Loot Crate, especially from lootcrate.com.
And
nice.
And Brian, I'm glad you mentioned that. Don't forget to go to Loot Crate, use our code. That's B for Bruder, F for fuck the mayor's wife in this movie.
What's the 15 for? I'm just kidding.
Time to go.
All right, but anywho, like Brian just mentioned, we launched our blood donors. It's kind of just like our version of a Patreon a couple weeks ago. I just want to give a quick shout out to those blood donors. Big shout outs to we got some legendary blood donors. Super friend of the show, Joe Swinford. Guy who hates all my movies, Sean Irwin.
Attaboy, Sean.
Halloween 3 lover, Matt Sears. and
Man.
Superfan Shan. Big shout out to them. And we
Yes,
got some
thank you,
Dream
guys.
Warriors fan also. We want to give a shout out to Miss Tasha Reed and of course my man Hunter Nelson. We really appreciate all the support. It means a lot to us that you're willing to give us your hard-earned money, especially during these tough times where money's not that easy to come by. It means a lot to us.
Absolutely.
It helps us, pay for site hosting and, SoundCloud, Zencaster. It helps us pay for these things for us to make this product for you. So just know that any donation you give us, whether it's $5 or $75, it means a lot to us.
Right.
And we really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to next week getting back to our roots, going to Camp Crystal Lake, 2009, Friday the 13th. Super excited about that. And y'all have a good night. Just want to remind everybody,